You are listening to the Dominance Academy podcast, the premier enclave for those who seek mastery in the arts of traditional relationship dynamics and the arcane knowledge of unlocking true leadership. We will explore the influence of desire, the mysteries behind polarity, the darker pathways of intimacy. And now your host, Mr. Justin.
Good evening. This is the Dominance Academy, and I'm your host, Mr. Justin. It's been a fine, wet day today here in New York City. Got fucking soaked on my way back, but here we are. And I've got a stream for you today about being soft and romantic and how this sort of thing can have detrimental effects on your relationship. And I was actually talking a little bit about this with my woman earlier today about romance and love and where all this stuff comes from. And you know, a long time ago, romance and love didn't really have a place. It wasn't until the Romanticist period, and I don't really remember when that was. So let me just look that up real quick. So the Romanticist period was around 1800 to 1850. And this is when things started making a drastic shift in literature and visual art, as well as like performances like plays, music, things of that nature. Everything started making a shift. And to get a look at some of those shifts and to understand how and why it happened, I'm not going to explain it, but you know, you could just Google that and do a little bit of a brief history on that. So prior to the Romanticist period, men and women operated very, very differently between one another. And marriage was different, families were different, and it was a completely different ball game. And then Romanticism came in, and it turned into a very, very different game. And then as these things change and grow, what happens is people grow into that reality after it's been established, and they think this is just normal. They think this is the normal reality. This is just how things are. And this is not the case. This is not how things actually are. This is just a cultural development. And so many of the things that we consider as cultural norms, such as being romantic, is actually just an adaptation. It's something that has adapted and mutated over time to make you think that this is the right way or the way to be. And you know, if you're with a woman who is part of this sort of thing, is part of this this sort of like cultural massaging in of this information, and they're not willing to question it, right? And why would they? Because it benefits them greatly, because of all the, you know, like the simpy soft guys who just, you know, they're conditioned as well, so they kind of like fit together, you know. But when they get with a man, it sort of throws them for a little bit of a loop, and this is where your leadership and guidance comes into play. So we're gonna dive into that a little bit. Kibela Mouton, what's up? Good to see you. I think you're new here. I don't recognize that name, but pleasure having you. So yeah, we're gonna dive into that a little bit, and about how being soft and being, you know, I don't want to say weak because it sounds so, I don't know, it's a little derogatory, but being soft and romantic can ruin things. You know, it's kind of like if you have, they say like anything good in too much of a good thing becomes bad. And it also, not only does it become bad, but you become conditioned to it, so it becomes just regular and normal. And then on top of that, the it becomes less valued because these things are just regular and normal. So it's important to understand these things as a leader, right? Because if you have ever run a business, if you ever had employees underneath you, you will also understand how important it is to make small incremental portions of recognizing the good efforts of those that are on your team. So if you've ever been a team leader, a manager, business owner with employees, then you understand the importance of this. You understand the importance of recognizing good effort and making a verbal recognition of this, and then giving some sort of reward on top of that. And this makes them feel special, makes it feel special about what they're doing. Now, if you do this all the time, they're going to value it much less. Okay. Now, the thing is so we can take a look at like your regular guy. Okay, your regular guy who grows up in conventional society, he goes with the flow, he does what he thinks is right. Okay, and we can't blame him for doing what he thinks is right. This is just part of social conditioning. All right, and this comes through literature, it comes through music, it comes through film, it comes through plays, like all sorts of stuff. Okay, usually creative endeavors, because that's where there's the most flexibility. They're not going to write these things into law, you know. What's up? Kevinism 7 and King Soul of Power. Good to see you guys. Yeah, so we're looking at the regular guy, and he's got a decent job. He does, he's a good upstanding dude. Okay, he's gonna do these things, and he's a lot of the times they're asleep to what's really happening. And then after a while, of course, they get used up or whatever, and then they find themselves a red pill, and we all know what happens there. Okay, then become some sort of like cultist. And the thing is, though, is that when they go that far, it's like they go from like one extreme to the next. The actions themselves aren't inherently bad. They're not inherently dangerous or unproductive. Okay, so like say giving your woman flowers, or giving her gifts, or buying her a dress, or if you're married and you buy her a car or some jewelry or something like this. These things are not inherently bad. Okay, the bad part is where the motivation is from. Okay, so your regular dude does these things because A, he thinks he should. This is what a good man does. Okay, and B, a lot of times they're doing this in order to win the favor of the woman, or to stay in her good graces. And I know a guy like this. We used to be somewhat friends, but then I just realized he's nothing like me, and I'm like, okay, I can't deal with this dude anymore. So I stopped talking to him. But what I remember is, I can't remember what it was, anniversary or birthday, something for his wife was coming up, and he was stressing over it. And I said, well, like, what are you stressed about? He's like, I want to get her like a nice necklace, maybe with like some diamonds on it or something like that. I'm like, all right, cool. But he was stressed about it because he was afraid of her approval. He was afraid that it wasn't going to be good enough, or the right style, or looking, in a way that she might enjoy, or spent enough money on it. And he's like, oh man, because he mentioned that he spent X amount of dollars. I can't remember how much it was years ago. But he spent X amount of dollars on the piece of jewelry the year before, and now he needs to like meet or exceed that. And he was all stressed about it, not because of the money, like he makes like buckets of money, but he was just emotionally stressed out about this sort of thing. And so his problem there was that he was doing this to win, or to maintain his favor. Okay, or maintain his wife's favor with him. And he was afraid that if he fucked up, he would be having to deal with her brattiness or her disappointment or her bitchiness or whatever. Okay, so really he was trying to do something that he thought he should, and partially motivated was avoiding conflict. Now you tell me if this sounds like good motivation for action, right? This is not action that is fueled by integrity. Okay, this is not action that's fueled by principle. This is fueled by emotions like worry, anxiety, fear, avoidance. Okay, this is not proper movement for a man. And I knew he wasn't like I already knew he wasn't a man. I knew that, despite him owning what now 3 brownstones, in New York City, and making a lot of money, and his wife making even more money than that, it's like, despite having all this stuff, it's like I knew it from the beginning, right? Because you can tell these things. Let me just tell you, you can tell a lot by the way a man carries himself. I'm saying physically. Okay, now you can't tell everything, but if someone's like walking around, they're like slouched, right? And they just like slouch walk like this, and they're like, their upper back kind of like hunches over and their gut is sticking out and they're just kind of like curved over. There's something in the mind, because where your mind is, it will reflect in your body. Okay, if you have like high amounts of anxiety, if you have high stress, if you have very low self-esteem, these sort of things will show themselves in your body in one way or another. And one of the main places is posture. And I think that when you lack confidence and you have low self-esteem, this will show up in your posture. So you can tell a lot about a guy. Now, it's not foolproof, okay? I'm sure there's a bunch of losers out there who are deeply insecure who stand up straight, okay? And that's just out of habit. But I'm telling you, it's common enough where you can see. So just keep your eye out just to see patterns of behavior. Keep an eye on how people are standing, how they're carrying themselves. If they're able to just sit upright, shoulders back, chest up, in a very relaxed position, right? Not forced, all right? And you'll be able to see. And then just pay attention to the things that come out of their mouth, and then you can start putting 2 and 2 together, So when it comes to, romance and, acts of love and being romantic and all that stuff, you can still be firm. You can still be hard. You can still maintain order. And I would argue that having these things first will increase the romance and your loving actions and things of that nature. And this is because there's differences. Okay, this is because there's contrast. All right. So, I tell my guys that you should have, I've mentioned before, having like a mindset of being 12 inches back, 12 inches up. Okay. And this has to do with your mentality. All right. So having that distance, you can call it another way. You can call it having professional distance. So again, if you've ever been in a position of being a manager or being a team leader, or being a business owner with employees, you understand that you cannot get too buddy-buddy with those that are under you. You cannot get buddy-buddy with your team, just like the person above you, like, you're a team manager, but your manager can't get too close to you. There has to be a certain element, just a small bit of professional distance. And this is an extremely effective thing to maintain in a relationship as a man. Okay, you maintain a certain element of professional distance. And what this does is it does a few things, but one of the main things is that it maintains you as an authority, for one. And for the second part is this helps keep your emotions in check. All right. So you could imagine the problems that can ensue. And I've seen this before in the past, where like I've been part of a team and then see the team leader like I mentioned before, maybe a number of videos ago, a number of years ago, I was part of a creative team working on a video game. Okay, because I was a concept artist for a while, so I was freelancing or contracting at this video game developer in Manhattan, and we were working on a skateboarding game. So my job was to construct or to dream up the environments, and it was a pretty cool city. It was a mixture. It was called San Francisco, so it was a mixture of San Francisco and Tokyo, and everything had to be skatable. It was a really fun project. And so there was me on the environments, there was another guy doing concepting for characters, and then there was the 3D department, and this was like a couple of guys doing all the 3D and the modeling and the rendering, all that stuff. So so what had happened, and then there was the team lead. Okay, so he was the art director, and the art director was very good. Like he knew how to construct and how to lead everybody very well, and where to put our strengths. And this was good, and also with like time management. But when it came to meetings and stuff, he got too much on our level. And sometimes in meetings, things kind of like have an ebb and a flow between like staying on task and then like kind of like bullshitting a little bit, especially in like a video game culture where there's like people are snacking, people are taking breaks to play games, they're doing all sorts of stuff. It's a very loose environment. And so that kind of crept into meetings, and he was talking to us about going over things and then would slip into like buddy mode. And I saw how this affected the team, because it shifted the respect levels. Okay, and this is the problem of getting too close on a personal level and not being consistent in maintaining that professional distance. And I saw how when certain orders were given, when it was time to like, okay, because when you're developing a game, there's certain milestones that you have to hit in order to work within like a set timeline, because things are very much focused on getting things done within a special timeline, and so that you can get it out to sale and repay your investors and all that bullshit. So when it came to certain milestones and he was on top of people to try to get shit done, because he created that buddy vibe too much, and his professional distance wasn't far enough apart, it was a little too close, they didn't take it seriously. They were able to brush him off. They're like, oh yeah, like, I'll just say Mark, but his name wasn't Mark. They're like, oh yeah, Mark, like whatever, we'll get onto it tomorrow. And they like ignore the work that they had to do, and they'll go back to playing Call of Duty like for another 30 minutes when they should have, you're allowed to do that, but like, during like break time. And so he lost some of his power by actually, but it wasn't taken from him, he gave it away. Okay, because remember, you cannot ever lose power. The only time you can lose power is by giving it away. No one can actually take it from you. So he lost power by giving it away, by becoming too much of a friend. And it's challenging. I understand that. When you like your team, you like the people around you, you want to be likable. Like, you don't want to be that hard ass that nobody likes. Okay, there has to be some sort of likability, but you cannot do that at the expense of losing respect. Because once respect is gone, now the order of how things are going gets completely lost. It crumbles. So the same sort of thing happens in relationships. Okay, when you don't maintain a certain element of professional distance, things become too buddy-buddy, they become too relaxed, they become too comfortable, they become too soft, too romantic, and you lose that structure. And then when you try to, like when something comes up and you try to reinvigorate that structure for whatever reason, like let's say she, mouthed off or whatever, she kind of lost her cool, or she just came out of character, and you need to now enforce something. You've now painted yourself in a completely different tone. Now you're her buddy, her equal, trying to enforce rules. And this is not going to work. All right. So it's something that the softness and the buddy stuff and the romance you can dip into, but you don't want to spend too much time there. So it's something where you're like flying at an altitude and you can dip down into a lower altitude and then come back out. Okay. But you don't want to go down and cruise for too long. All right. And this is in all contexts. Okay. This is in your home. This is when you go to work. This is when you're visiting her parents. This is when she's visiting your family. This is when you go on vacation. This is everywhere. Okay. Like just because you're on vacation doesn't mean now you are more relaxed. Okay. That just means you don't have your outside stressors coming at you, but you yourself within your relationship, your role hasn't changed. You're just now, instead of at home, you're on a beach or you're in the woods or whatever, wherever your vacation is. So you have to be consistent and maintain these things, these structures at all times. All right. And it's been said a number of times that this isn't like cut out for everybody. Okay. And it's not, it really isn't. And it doesn't make you less of a man if you are, like unable to, to have a relationship like this. Just understands that if you do try to have order and structure, things will be smoother. All right. It's daunting. It's something you have to be on top of. I think you have to pay attention to all the time. All the time. And if you don't have that in you, I would say if you're loose and relaxed, then be okay with having a woman who is loose and relaxed, and you guys can just be loose and relaxed together, and understands that things might come up. And if you're both like very open-minded and flexible, then maybe things will be okay. Okay. But I do know that many women, when things come up that produce uncertainty, they look for certainty. And if you're an uncertain kind of person, if you're a go with the flow, flexible kind of dude and like, we'll figure it out, blah, blah, blah. Like, this is not going to make her feel more comfortable. Okay. So just keep that in mind, that life is unpredictable. So in order to deal with unpredictability, it requires someone who has some level of consistency. Okay. So you don't want, but if you are this type, all right, there's some things to keep in mind. Okay. So obviously, I mentioned the professional distance. The other thing you want, and this just covers everything in the list, is you want consistency. So you can't be like all over the place, and you can't be soft and romantic all the time. All right. This just does not work. And that's the problem of, say, Hollywood and the effects of Hollywood, because it just gives you this little snippet of a life. And it's like, well, what does in this romantic couple in this movie, what does a span of 10 years look like? Like, are they acting like this every single day for 10 years? No. All right. What does the day-to-day look like? Okay. Those movies would be kind of boring. So they're not going to make money. And so they just promote the fun, the fireworks and the romance and all that bullshit. Because that's what sells. But you have to be consistent. All right. So we kind of touched on a little bit is not being lazy. Don't be lazy in your relationship. So you can't. If you want order, if you want structure, and you want to design a program, and say you have a program and you want to implement the program and maintain the program, you cannot just like put it forth and then just let it be and then expect her to have everything memorized and stay on it every single day for the rest of your relationship. That's not how this works. Okay. Remember, women are more or less impulsive. They're more or less chaotic. And I don't say that in a derogatory way. They like just a lot of variety. They get, they get distracted by certain impulses. They're affected because they're sensitive beings. They're affected by their environment, by music, by things they read, by other people in their lives. So it's important to not be lazy in maintaining that, because as good as your structure may be, she's not going to be on it as you are. So what that means is that you're going to have to work twice as hard as she is, because you have to be doubly on top of everything. So she's on top of things just on one level. All right, you're 2 levels for her 1 level. So you keep that in mind. You cannot do these things lightly, and you cannot do these things with a lazy attitude. All right. The next thing is to not be too permissive. All right. Don't be too permissive. Learn to say no. Learn to deny her some requests. And it's okay. It's okay for her to be disappointed. And this is another thing that soft romantic guys avoid, right? They're very avoidant. Like I mentioned with my friend with the necklace and all that shit. They're very avoidant of a woman's disappointment. And if you want structure, again, if you've ever been a team leader, a manager, a business owner, and with people under you, they're going to get disappointed. That's not the goal of keeping them happy. All right. Of course, you don't want them to be unhappy. All right. You want them to be productive people on your team, but keeping them happy isn't the goal. That's not the overarching goal. So it must be understood that there will be times when they will be denied things that they want. There'll be times when the direction that things need to go is not going to be comfortable for them. It's going to challenge them. And you have to be all right with this. You have to be all right with them grumbling and muttering stuff under their breath and not wanting to come to work or whatever. Okay? And if things go too far left, you having to have the ability to correct things and put things back on course. It's the the utmost necessity. Okay? So you can't be too permissive. You cannot give too much of a green light. I know you love her. I know you think she's beautiful. I know you love her personality and her traits. And like the most perfect woman ever needs to have a boundary. They need to have these structures in place. They need to be told no sometimes. All right. I'm not saying be a hard ass and say no all the time. It's just no sometimes, so that she understands that there are boundaries, that no matter how, how cute she is, or how attractive she's being, or cute personality, she's flirting with you, or even she's complaining. All right. You have to be steadfast. All right. And don't be too permissive. Now, I've in the course in the academy, we talk about intermittent reinforcement. Okay, so this is like a little deviation to explain something that I'm going to put in here about being permissive sometimes. Okay, so the way intermittent reinforcement does is it sets a pattern of behavior and then creates an expectation. Then you break that pattern randomly, and that keeps the brain on its toes. And where you can see this most often is in casinos. All right, especially like in slots. So you're playing the slot machine, and you'll get a win, then you'll get another win, and then you'll get a close to win, and then you'll get a complete failure, and then you get another failure, and then close to win, and then a win, and then a failure. It's completely randomized. Okay, so but it's intermittent, that you're going to win, and this is what keeps your butt in the seat, putting more coins in that slot machine. And this is what's called intermittent reinforcement. So I'm not saying don't be permissive at all. I'm saying don't be too permissive. So that implies be permissive sometimes when she makes a request, just like if you had a daughter that you loved and cared for, but still wanted to guide and have structure. Sometimes when she has a request and it just like softens your heart a little bit, and you're like, all right, honey, let's go get that thing, or let's go do that thing. Okay. And they get excited, and you're like, yay. And then that pumps them up. Okay. So you need to implement this at times as well. Okay. Just don't be permissive more than you are not permissive. Okay. Because then that offsets things. That closes the distance of the professional distance. All right. The next one is no just because. All right. Always have a reason for your choices, your words, your thoughts, your actions, everything. With regard to your life, but also with regard to your woman. Don't do something nice for her. And she goes, what's this for? And you go, just because. Okay. Like when you're looking at cards in the pharmacy, and they have all the different events and things like that, anniversary, wedding, birthday, all that stuff. And then there's a section that says just because. Okay. This is fine, like for your mom. That's fine. You want to get her a card just because? Fine. Okay. But your woman, there is no just because. And she will say, no. There should always be times for just because you love her. Okay. No, this is not how rewards work. This is not how it works. When it comes to acts of romance and times when you are soft, times when you are giving, okay, you must have a reason, not just because. It's romance because of this, okay? And there's it when you're soft, when there is romance involved, it must be done with a purpose, for a reason. Not like she's gonna get a smile on her face, okay? She's gonna feel good, okay? Especially if she's like really into you, she loves you, and that sort of thing. But it doesn't do anything if it's just because. You need to be a couple moves ahead. Why are you bringing her to an uprisen emotional state? And then once you do that, what are you going to do with it? Like, so that's what the just because fails, okay? Not only is it not motivated by anything, it has no aim, and then it has no pathway after that aim is achieved. It's just dead in the water. It serves nothing, okay? So, but if you have romance with a purpose, that means you've been paying attention to her behavior. You've been recognizing certain consistencies. She's been doing great with XYZ. And you're like, you know what? She's been working hard. She's staying on point. I want to do something nice for her. Okay. You want to take her somewhere. You want to buy her something. You want to get her a dress, piece of jewelry, or box of chocolates, whatever it is that you know that she digs. Okay. Then, or you want to plan like some little home thing. And there's a lot of things you can do at home as far as creativity goes. We won't get into that right now, but you have to understand like where the motivation has come from, why you want to give her these things. Okay. Then you present it as such and you explain why it's happening. Okay. Because there's one thing, if your boss comes up to you and says, hey man, lunch is on me today. You're like, all right, cool. Like whatever, but I don't get it, but all right, that's awesome. Versus he comes up to you, gives you a pat on the back, explains the thing that you did that was great and that he approves of, and he says, that's why I'm giving you, buying you lunch today. You're like, okay, cool. So now it all makes sense. It's a full 360. All right. So you have to deliver that same 360. Again, if you're afraid, if you don't have that professional distance, you're not going to be able to deliver this full 360, meaning the explanation behind what you're doing, the reward. Okay. So give that explanation and then deliver the thing, but then understand, okay, this is going to shift how she's feeling about herself. This is going to shift how she sees where she is, her environment. And, this might turn her on or whatever. What are you going to do with that? What are the steps after that? Where are you going to lead her? Why are you going to lead her there? Is this going to lead to another lesson? Could this lead to this could lead to a scene. This could lead to training. This could lead to just pleasure. This could lead to so many different things. But you have to have an idea in mind of where you're going to go and why. You guys might be thinking, well, geez, that's just overload, man. Like that's too much thinking. That's too much planning. I don't want to do all that. I just want to give her some flowers and fuck. You can, but you're missing a whole lot more that's a possibility for further growth, for further depth, for more anchoring. Because there's deeper things happening inside her head while you're doing this stuff. Because it's intermittent, okay, just like those slot machines, and you see those certain symbols come up, this is starting to anchor certain symbols and sound. That's why they have sounds. That's why they have certain colors. That's why they have it in patterns. It's all there to create anchors in your mind, to associate that with money and a dopamine hit. This is what you can do within your relationship when it comes to giving rewards for certain behaviors. Now you're creating anchors. All right. So this goes deeper than just like wanting to do something nice. It's great that you want to do something for your woman, right? If she's earned it and you care about her, it's fucking awesome. Okay. But you have to understand the full structure of it and how, and the importance of it and where you can take things, right? It's a beautiful creative thing that you can do. So, no just because. Okay. Now, when you are, not being too permissive, you're like enforcing certain rules. You don't want to give in to excuses or flirting. Okay. So I've seen these memes, right, where a little joke where this is like, oh, when your girl is you get into a fight with your girl, and then it shows a picture of her trying to apologize, and it's just a picture of her lying on her side, like lifting up her skirt, and she's not wearing any panties. If you fall for that stuff, you are a fool. You're an absolute fool. Because that teaches her that you can easily be swayed by pleasure. She broke a rule, she pissed you off, she disrespected you, or she embarrassed you, or whatever it was, okay? Whatever the wrongdoing was. She's learning that she can get away with bullshit and then fix it, so to speak, by just giving you sex. Meaning that she now has a very powerful playable token that works on you all the time. This is why I say you cannot be moved by a woman's beauty. You cannot be moved by her cute behavior. You cannot be moved by her cute voice and her goofing around and being like a cute little girl. You can't be moved by her being extra slutty. I remember there was this was a long time ago, and I was not even living in New York. I remember I was seeing this Korean girl, and I was involved in a lot of shit, a lot of creative endeavors. I was running 3 galleries with some friends of mine. I was breakdancing. I was part of a breakdancing crew. I was skateboarding, and I wanted to go skating. Oh, and I was DJing at the same time. And so, I was with her, and we were just like messing around and stuff. And I was like, okay, it's time for me. I'm going to go skating. I'm meeting up with my buddy. We're going to go skating. And she's like, no. I'm like, I want to spend time with you. And she started like begging and pleading. I'm like, no, I'm going skating. And she started getting upset. So she like went through all these things. So she went like begging and pleading. Then she got annoyed. So the begging and pleading didn't work. Her getting frustrated and annoyed with me, like turning a little bitchy, that didn't work. And so she turned on the slut mode. And she's like, well, I'll suck your dick. And I was like, no, I need my chi for skating. and then she because the second move, when she was getting a little bit frustrated, a little bit bitchy, that was the fake one. All right. That was the costume to put on to see if I would react. The real one came out when I completely denied her of everything, including sex, right? Because it's basically saying, I think skateboarding is more attractive than you are. And that really pissed her off. And, she grabbed her bag and kind of like puffed off and left the apartment. And it's like, hey, that's just the way it is. You have to be okay with denying them. And they're going to do some things sometimes if you haven't trained her like what's okay and what's not okay in terms of how she reacts or how she presents certain things. But she you don't want to give in to her excuses. You don't want to give in to her her banter. You don't want to give in to any kind of sarcasm. You don't want to get into arguing. You don't want to give into her bitchy attitude, and you don't want to give into her flirting and being cute and her sex and all that stuff. All of it, anything that she presents cannot sway you from whatever it is that you put forth. All right, if it's something that she doesn't like, or something that you want to do, or something you don't want to do, You cannot be moved by it. All right. And now this ties back because the soft and romantic dude, he's going to be so afraid of losing her approval, losing her love, losing his access to sex, that he's going to be very afraid to say no. He's going to be very afraid to deny her of these things. And and that's not the way to be. That really is not the way to be. It's gonna fuck you up. So you have to be all right with telling her no, despite what she does. No matter if she's waving her pussy in your face, got her mouth open, she's on her knees, drool's coming down her tongue, like you gotta let all that go to say you have no control over me whatsoever. So next one is to guide and instruct regularly. All right. So again, this ties in with the being consistent, having a bit of professional distance, and you want to be guiding and instructing regularly on like small stuff, very small stuff, small requests. Hey, baby, go and grab my hoodie. Baby, can you please grab my shoes? Now, I'm not above using please and thank you because, so some guys, I'll just kind of tangent here for a second about giving instructions. A lot of guys think that if I'm a leader and I'm the dominant man, that means I'm above using manners. So let me ask you, if you think you're that way, what do you think she's going to learn? So you're saying that you're not going to use manners, but she is. That doesn't make any sense. You have to be the example for which she is to follow. So if I tell my woman, baby, please grab my shoes, or baby, can you please grab my jacket out of the closet, I'm going to use please and thank you. And when she gives it to me, I say thank you, because I want her to be using please and thank you. If I'm barking orders all day without any kind of manners, she's going to learn that. That's going to be the consistent words she hears. So just keep that in mind. All right. So guide and instruct regularly. This is on the small stuff around just in your daily life. I know you can go and get your own drink. Ask her to go get you a drink. Right? I know you can go grab your socks out of the drawer. Ask her to get your socks out of the drawer. Do these things, small things, so that she becomes accustomed to you giving commands. And so your mind gets accustomed to giving commands. All right? This is all very important. It's all tied together. Everything is linked. All right? It's not linear. It's not like 1, 2, 3, 4. All of these things kind of have to exist at the same time. That's sort of part of the challenges of being a structured man, being a traditionally minded man, is that it's not like you work on one thing and then you work on the next and you work on the next. All of these things kind of have to come up together. Yeah, you know what, King Solar Power, I'm looking in the comments here. Yes, they do like it when you say no sometimes. It's a weird thing. Women, don't try to understand it. Don't try to understand women. Not too much. Just know that they do appreciate when you say no sometimes. And then J98, what's up, man? You said everything has to be earned, even gifts and romance for your woman. Yes. So... and that's what makes it special. If it's uncommon, if it pops up randomly, and if it pops up based on her behavior, then you start making these triggers. All right? You start creating these anchors, and now she's understanding that good things happen when I'm good. When I'm a good girl, I get good things. When I'm a bad girl, I get spankies. So that's how it works in my relationship anyways. So along with the consistency, not being lazy, guiding, instructing regularly. Okay, it's not just guide, instruct regularly. Is don't be wishy-washy. Okay, so if she's like, sir, what would you like for dinner this evening? Or she's like, baby, I'm going to the store. Is there anything you'd like for dinner? Don't be like, surprise me. Or whatever you want to cook. This is no good. Be specific. Give instructions. She's like basically saying, will you please instruct me on what to buy at the store? Don't be wishy-washy with your commands. Don't ever be wishy-washy. Whatever you want. I don't know. Let me just think about it. And then just never, if you need a minute, just say, you know what? Give me a second. Let me think about that, and I'll get right back to you. And then boom, there's your answer. This is how you have to operate. You cannot be wishy-washy about any of this stuff. Okay? Never be wishy-washy with your commands, and this ties in with not doubting yourself. Understands that your instincts are important to you. Trust your instincts, trust your judgment, trust the things that you want. And if it just pops up, you're like, you know what? I want a cucumber radish salad. I want some roasted chicken and an avocado. And if that's just what popped into your head, that just popped into my head. That's what you tell her to get at the store. This is what I want to eat tonight. Okay? So don't be wishy-washy with any of your commands. Nothing. Obviously, keep up with the rules. You want to maintain the rules that you set. So if you have, this is why I say don't have too many rules all at once. You start with commands, very simple. I made a video about just simple commands that you can have. They're more or less sexual in nature, like get on your knees, bend over, take off your clothes. But the rules should be simple as well. So you don't want to overwhelm your relationship. You don't want to overwhelm your head, and you don't want to overwhelm her head with too many rules. You can create a lot of rules, okay? I've got probably about 60, okay? But over time, I've been just producing just a couple at a time, because I want to bring myself into progressive overload principle, and I want to bring her into progressive overload principle. All right, so it doesn't seem overwhelming, and it just goes slightly outside of her comfort zone as well as mine, because I can't remember everything. Okay, I'm not going to be able to memorize 60 rules and monitoring 60 behaviors all the time. Okay, not right off rip. Okay, so it's got to be done a little bit at a time. And you can manage a little bit, and then you add a little more. You can manage that. Add a little more, you can manage that. And you keep going and going and going. All right? This is how it works. So, and it allows you to keep up with the rules. If you have too much, then you can forget about them. You can let things slide. It just gets too complex. So if you do have rules in your relationship, and I am a strong advocate of having them, you should. It's both good for you as well as your woman, because you're creating an opportunity for you to lead. That's what rules are great for. There's other reasons for rules, but one of the great benefits is that it gives you an opportunity. You're creating opportunities for leadership. Okay, so and if you have a few of them, they're easy to keep up with. All right. And then I mentioned romance for a purpose and romance for a reward. So you just don't want to give these things too freely, right? And so a lot of this stuff, once you start really implementing this stuff, okay, once you start implementing these things, it's a lot, and you start seeing the rewards, right? You start seeing not the rewards, but you start seeing the benefits in your relationship. You start seeing the benefits in how things are moving. Then it's a lot easier to sit here and say, I'm the prize. Not even what's something beyond a prize, right? Because a prize is just this nice token. So I don't like saying that the man is the prize, because a prize is just a token you get for something you've done. Okay. But for lack of a better word, let's just use prize for now. When you're able to implement the structure and you're not being too soft and romantic, and you're being soft and romantic at the right times with the right structure involved so that it has impact, and then you can see the fruits of that impact, that's when you can really internalize and understand how much of a prize you actually are. Okay, so it's one thing to have the belief, and I think it's good to have that belief, even if you don't have a full understanding or a full implementation of certain structures in order to really get it. Okay, so it's fine to have that belief. All right, I think it's better than not having it and just thinking you're, lowly, or you're this fucking worm. All right, have the overconfidence. Okay, that's great, fine. But you really get to understand it, you really get to see it when you have some sort of structure, when you have this ability to kind of reflect and measure and see development. Okay, just like if you say you're again, like business analogies, like you're running your business and you're like, I've got the best blank business in the nation. You like, I think every person, like if you've got like a wash and fold business, you should be like, I've got the best fucking wash and fold in New York City. Okay, you shouldn't be like, well, it's average, or yeah, it's okay. Okay, you should be, I have the best wash and fold in New York City. This is your belief. All right, now that belief becomes really strengthened after you've looked at the structure of your business and you start tracking things and you start developing things and you start scaling it and growing and start managing and shifting things around so that it promotes growth. Now you actually have actionable data. You got real information proving it, that your belief is true. Okay, so you can create these things very simply in your relationships, even if they're new. Okay, they don't have to be things that have gone on for years and so on like that. You can always have structure, and I believe that you should, even when you're first meeting a woman. When you have that, this is what allows you to have something to look at, and by having that professional distance to separate yourself from just slightly, so you can look at things and see proof, see evidence of your belief that you are the shit. And you say, look, because of me, this is what's grown. This is what I've influenced. All right. So, but it's not for everybody. It's not an easy task. Okay. It becomes easier the more you do it, of course, just like anything else. All right. And it can become habitual. But the thing is, the path of man is never done. The path of man is continual improvement, continual adjusting, continual flow. Okay. What's there was a Japanese word for that, where it's like perpetual improvement. I can't remember what it is, but it's it's a very popular Japanese phrase as Americans like to adopt. But yeah, you constantly want to have this. You want to have this constant upward looking, because you're not done ever. You've never done things perfectly, and you never will. And it's actually great that you've never done things perfectly, because that means you have a sharp enough eye to understand that there's faults, where there's places to improve. All right, nothing's 100% acceptable, so that you can always push, you can always grow, you can always learn, you can always take things apart and replace things and keep growing. Okay, so it's like, yeah, certain aspects you can adapt, and you're going to be comfortable with this, and those things will become habitual, but you're going to be adding new things. You're going to constantly be growing. And so it's like this path, the path of man, is not an easy path. Shit, I would say okay, Nubako, Jesus is the Christ, the Son of the living God. Okay. Thanks for coming in and offering that random bit of information. Okay, so I was just thinking that this kind of path is not easy, but no path for man is easy. Even for like the soft romantic simp, all right, they don't have it easy because they're typically not getting what they want. And the path of man is not easy because we constantly have to create what we want. You know, there's no God mode out here. There's no genie effect. And that's what it is. You will constantly suffer, but it's a matter of embracing that suffering, embracing the discomfort. This is the path to winning. And then you adapt, and then it's not that big of a deal. You know, I mean, like, think of our ancestors. Like, we are such pussies compared to our ancestors. Such pussies. I know of some of my ancestors and the things that they went through. Super, super harsh winters in Russia. Not having food. Like, I can't remember the last time I didn't have food. I don't think I've ever not had food. But my ancestors were like, I wonder if we're going to eat this week. Like this week, not today. Okay? I wonder if we're going to eat this week. And there's like 5 children to feed. And it's brick outside. What are you going to do? And it's like the whole town, the whole village is fucking poor. What you gonna do? You know, or your ancestors who fought in wars. You know, I've got friends whose grandfathers were in World War II. Like, literally stormed the beaches in Normandy. In the mud with machine gun fire coming down and all that stuff. You know, our ancestors who were, even before firearms, fighting one another. Like, we look at these things in movies and be like, oh, that's so cool, that's romantic. And, you know, we look at it with a romantic eye. And it's like, you know, I was sitting there with my girl. She loves these like Viking shows. She loves all those shows about Viking warriors and shit like that. She likes to think of me as like her Viking warrior, Viking lord. I don't know why. Maybe it's just the beard and tattoos. But you know, she was wondering. She's like, man, I wonder how like sex was with these people. You know, because she's always, I mean, she just gets turned on by the imagery and thinks about having sex with these type of guys. But she's like, they didn't wash. Like, they must have stank like hell. Like, could you imagine, like, the Viking, like, what his, you know, like, his whole body must have just reeked after fighting and wearing furs and not showering and all this stuff. And then the women, like, they're the same, like, just reeking. Like, it's probably been disgusting. Disgusting how our ancestors lived compared to how we are. We have so many conveniences. So many conveniences. Yet, we have a difficult time just standing upright. Both figuratively and literally. Like, guys just cannot stand upright. Except when they're online. Except when they're in the comment section on Facebook. Then they've got they've got a titanium rod for a spine. Okay? They got elephant-sized testicles. But in real life, you know, they're out here being soft. They're out here pandering to, you know, people's desires, bending to their pronouns, all this crazy stuff. You know, like I was in a clubhouse room, and they couldn't get past using the word female or woman. And the one guy was like, well, you know, I'm going to talk about women in terms of female because nowadays the word woman has 12,000 different meanings. So yes, I'm going to call you all females. And now even man, the word man has been blasphemized. Is that a word? Blasphemed. Right? Because there's just men and there's not men. But people are like, well, man can have whatever definition that I want it to have. Okay? Well, this is the problem of postmodernism. This is the effect of postmodernism, saying, well, whatever I believe is true because I believe it, and that's my truth. And my truth is just as valid as the truth. That's the fuck up of postmodernism. Fuck those guys. You look at you want to see something wild. Go look at art history and look at the trajectory of art. If you go way far back, okay, starting with the Renaissance, art was very high level, very, very high level, especially when during the Renaissance they figured out perspective. Because before the Renaissance, there was no perspective. It's really wild. We can't even conceive of it, but they could not conceive of imagery in 3 dimensions. Can you imagine that? Like, you can sit there and close your eyes and imagine a cube in 3 dimensions. That's because of the broadband psychological breakthrough of understanding perspective back in the Renaissance. But prior to that, they could not conceive of mentally a 3-dimensional object. It wasn't possible. They could not translate that onto a canvas or a piece of paper. So if you look at like Renaissance and then after, all the way up through, these are all like the traditional styles of art, where it was most of it was religious, and it was just with the highest quality, where people were producing at just the prowess, the artistic prowess of the artists back then was massive, and they would spend forever on certain works, and they would create these beautiful works of art that were close to photoreal, and they were magnificent. And then came along the postmodernists, and then modernism after that, or the modernism and then postmodernism. So that's when we started having a breakdown. And we're like, well, we can just interpret art any way we want because, it's just whatever I feel. Whatever I feel is art is art. And it's like, well, back then when there was traditionalism, there were clearly defined ideas of what was art. And if you could hack it, you were an artist. If you couldn't hack it, you had to put down your shit and pick up something else. Okay? You're not a painter. You suck. Don't try it. Or work harder, learn from somebody better. But it's like there was a certain point in time where that mentality started happening, and then they were like, okay, well, whatever I say it goes is what it is. And next thing you know, that develops into someone just putting like a streak across a painting and calling it a forest. And it's like, and then you got people sitting there looking at it going, oh yeah, I see where they're coming from. That I can see what they mean by the forest. And then next to the painting, there's this huge philosophical explanation about why. Okay? Like, good traditional art, you look at that old stuff from the Renaissance and post-Renaissance into the traditional era, there's no need for explanation. You can just look at it and go, that's fucking good. It doesn't require an explanation. Just like a man does not require an explanation. All these males, they need to explain their manhood, right? Because it's a philosophical notion to them. They're like, well, man can just mean whatever. And then they fill in with their long diatribe of what it means and to defend themselves philosophically. But you look at things in a traditional sense, it's really cut and dry of what a man is. He has very distinct qualities. Very distinct. One of them being, having integrity, having courage, having valor, having honesty. Like, these are tried and true, timeless qualities of men. This is what allows you to lead. If you have to explain yourself before you lead just to convince them that you are someone who is able to be followed, you're not that guy. It should be seen, it should be felt. Just like looking at these paintings can just be seen and felt. There's no explanation needed. But the guy who takes the big stroke with one brush stroke, they need an explanation because it's bullshit. And they know it's bullshit. They know they're selling bullshit. But they've drank their own Kool-Aid enough, just like a lot of these males. They've drank their own Kool-Aid enough. They go, oh yeah, you know what? I have convinced myself that I'm a man because of blah, 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 blah. You know, but when you're around other men, you know it. You can see it, hear it, smell it. It's there. It's palpable. But yeah, so if you want to see some fucked up shit, look at the trajectory of art from the Renaissance all the way up to the modern era and the postmodern era and see what the hell happened. You know, you go to a museum and you look at these sculptures, okay? I mean, sculpture's fucking wild. You look at traditional sculpture, they'll take a gigantic chunk of marble, one huge piece of marble, and sculpt, you know, a person, right? And the anatomy is just spot on perfect. Like they've got techniques in there where it even looks almost translucent, where you, like the way skin is translucent, light passes through skin actually, because we have multi layers of it. That's why it's so difficult to capture in imagery and drawing and painting and things like that. But they're able to capture this effect in certain types of sculpture with marble. And so the anatomy is great. The posing is like, it almost looks like they can come alive and just step off of that block and start moving around. Okay. It would take years to do this. And you screw up, you carve this wrong, and you know, their hand is like this holding something, you knock off that pinky, you're screwed. That's it. You're starting over. It's like that. It's not like they had fucking Gorilla Glue, right? So just the care and skill, like, be a man who has care and skill. Now, like there's this I think it's in San Francisco, there's a museum where the artist took just a boulder, just a random boulder, and placed it down on one end of a bridge that's there, or like on the outside of the museum, so people are like forced to walk around it. Okay. And this thing is like revered as something brilliant and is worth a lot of money. Now, granted, it's not worth as much as these, like, you know, ancient, beautiful sculptures, because those are even priceless. They're beyond measure. But it's like to think that like that's quality, because it isn't. It's just a boulder, and to make it have quality, it requires deep explanation. This is not the way. Men have no need to explain themselves. It is just seen. It is felt. It is heard. What's up, Sanctified? Good to see you, man. So just understand that shit, man. Like, the way guys are encouraged to be in certain ways in contemporary society, being soft, being romantic, being this guy that is portrayed in movies, okay? You can try this and use it like you're cosplaying, okay? In order to create something within your relationship, okay? To create an effect, right? Where I was mentioning like how you can make this part of a larger plan that's being a few steps ahead. But to be this way more often than not is detrimental. And I think a lot of you know this. But there's a difference between knowing this and putting it into action. One must be able to put these things into action without fear, without doubt. This is what's important. Because there's no point and being so smart about something but doing nothing about it. Because like there's no difference. That's like having all the knowledge in the world about how to use a certain firearm and having the firearm but never using it. That's the same thing as not having it. You know, what's the point? And I see this a lot, you know, like what's the point in knowing tons about MMA, telling people that you train, but you never actually use it? That's equal to not having it at all. So it's one thing to have these concepts down, to understand, to not be lazy, to understand, to be consistent, to understand that you need to say no sometimes, to understand to not be too permissible with your woman, to understand to use romance and softness with a purpose and at certain particular times when it's warranted. And there's a difference between knowing it and actually implementing it without fear, with real conviction. This is what makes a huge difference between a man and someone who's cosplaying as a man. I'd say fear is probably one of the biggest things. And while there's never any losses in the game and only wins, it's being able to look at the lessons. So if you do encounter this and you wish you could, but you didn't, and you sat back and, man, I should have said no. I should have enforced that rule. I should have said something. I should have scolded her. I should have bent her over my knee and given her a spanking, but I didn't. And now the moment has passed and you're reflecting on it and going, fuck. You didn't really lose. I mean, you dropped the ball a little bit. But if you can analyze and reflect and then change the next time and never let that happen again, well, then you won. So there's never any real loss. You just can't have any fear. This is a major deciding factor. What's up, King Ken? Salute to you. You know, and your fear cannot be with a chip on your shoulder. You know, I hear too many guys talking like this, where they're like, fuck these women. You know, it's like, okay, like, I get where you're coming from, but that's the wrong attitude. Like, there really should be no attitude whatsoever. Zero attitude. Like, fuck these women, yes, in spirit, but by having those words used, okay, it comes off like you've got a chip on your shoulder. Like you're distancing yourself and keeping that professional distance out of spite. And this isn't the way either. There should be no emotions involved. Not at all. Until you have a reason for it. Until it warrants it. You know, my girl even mentioned it today. You know, it was in the evening, and she's like, you know, you're not very emotional. She doesn't realize how good she's got it. She forgets. You know, and that's what happens when you have influence and they get conditions to being around you. They lose sense of what they were exposed to before. You know, these like emotive guys who easily get upset. These emotive guys who are just pouring love and affection on them all the time. You know, they lose connection with that. They forget about it. It becomes like this kind of distant idea. And so it's like, I'm not surprised that, because like when she said that, because she just doesn't have the contrast anymore. You know, so she's like, man, you're not so very emotional. And it's like, well, because you've forgotten what it's like being with a guy who is. But I didn't say that to her, you know, just kind of let her ride with it. But yeah, it's important to be able to maintain your maintain control of your emotions, and and maintain that professional distance, but without that chip on your shoulder. You should have no chips whatsoever. No chips. If you do, fix them, heal them. All right, because having that just brings poison into your situation. You got to remember, like, your relationship, and in your home and in her home, whatever, these are sanctuaries. These are sanctuaries. So just like I talk about, like, having your mind protected at all times and be aware and have a very strong filter for the information that comes into your mind, your relationship is to be protected in the same way. And you can't be an element that brings poison or chaos or drama into your situation. So you have a filter for yourself. You have a filter for her. You have a filter for outside influences, be it family, culture, media, whatever. Okay? So your relationship is protected in the same way that your mind is protected. Right? It's holy ground. So you don't want to have that chip on your shoulder. You don't want to have disgruntled things. You don't want to have trauma. You don't want to have any sort of these attachments when you're coming into a relationship. It will seep out and it will destroy things. It will take them out. Over time, it will start to rot. Okay? And you can't have that. So do not bring these things into your relationships. Okay? If you have this stuff, seek help. Get training, get a coach, get a therapist, whatever you need. Okay? But just know that something like that is going to erode your relationship faster than, I don't know, not having a big enough apartment or, not making enough money. Like, those things can be dealt with. All right. That's not going to break things down quite as fast as having some shit going on inside you that's going to seep into the relationship and poison it. Okay. So you got to get on top of that, because you can't, if you've got that, you can't go through all the stuff that I went over this evening with running your relationship, with leadership, with guidance, with influence. You cannot be that guy if you're carrying around some shit. You have to have silence inside you. There has to be stillness, because that is the position that you can lead from effectively. If it's not still, you're going to be leading from that, whatever that is. And you're going to bring that into your relationships. So I'm not saying you have to be perfect, but there should be more stillness than not. Okay. So, all right, it's time for me to relax and plan out. I'm putting together, this is a little bit of an announcement. I'm putting together an ebook. So it's going to be a freebie. So it's not going to be super deep or anything like that, but it's going to be a freebie. And I'm going to be putting it out there. It's going to be on the Gumroad. And, obviously it's going to lead to other things once you get the download, but working on that. So this is what I'm going to be spending the rest of my evening on, working on the outline for that. So I've appreciated everyone who has come through on the live. Love you guys. I appreciate the support, and I thank everyone who's catching this on the replay. It's great to have you as well. I will catch you on the next one. This is Mr. Justin, and you're watching the Dominance Academy podcast. Have a good one. We'll see you on the next time.